Hi friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing another episode of Realtor Reactions. So right now I am logged into Reddit and I just typed in like first time home buyer horror stories and closing stories. So I will read the full description and then we'll talk about, is it a home buyer horror story or no big deal? So let's get started. Okay, so this user asked if this was a big deal. Okay, so in the blue, it's the client. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Sorry to bother you again. I was under the impression that we were getting a conventional loan. Is there a reason why the loan estimate page 20 says FHA as the loan type? The lender then says, I switched it because it brings your cash to close much lower. This will technically only have you placing 3.5% down with a lower closing cost. It just made more sense for you guys. Okay, thanks for clarifying. No problem. Okay, so the backstory to this text that I saw just now that I read to you guys was they had multiple offer situation on the property and the seller chose not the highest offer but the offer with the best terms. And so this client was up against other higher FHA buyers. But the seller told them that they had specifically chose their offer because they were going conventional with a higher percent down. And so it was a safer bet for the sellers. And so that's why they chose them. So a couple thoughts about this because it is bad. It is shady. And it is a big deal. It's actually your loan officer isn't being very honest up front. So in the contract, whenever we put offers in homes, we have to tell the sellers the type of financing. You know, are you cash? Are you financing? And if you're financing, what type of loan, right? So FHA, conventional, VA, USDA. And we also have to put how much you're putting down and how long the term is. And so this just helps the seller know how serious you are or how qualified you may be as a buyer. As the seller, I'm looking at an FHA 3.5% down, and I'm looking at a conventional 20% down. And let's just say for easy terms that both of them are the same purchase price. Okay, they're both $500,000. 3.5% down, 20% down. In the eyes of a seller, they are going to think it is more secure and less risk for them, and to make sure that this deal goes to the closing table is a stronger buyer with the most money down. Okay, so they're going to think, oh, the conventional buyer that's putting down 20% has more cash. So if anything happens in this transaction, they have more cash than buyer one, who's only putting 3.5% down, and they most likely will not have enough cash if anything happens in this transaction. So in their head, they're going to think the stronger buyer is buyer two with a conventional 20% down. In this case, the seller did choose the conventional buyer over the other FHA buyers because they thought they were more secure. Then once you're under contract, the loan officer switches and says, nah, actually, we're going to go this route. But he knew, that loan officer knew it would save you more money, cash to close, with an FHA than a conventional. That's a no-brainer. They knew that, but for the sake of the multiple offers, they just told you to put this, and then once you were in, they switched it out. So that's actually very unethical, and I don't advise that. And when you actually switch your loan programs like that, the seller also has to agree to this. So you might not be doing yourself any favors. So before you do all that, make sure you know if you're doing FHA or conventional first before you put in offers. And if things change, definitely let the seller know beforehand. And you know what I've done in the past when we were having crazy multiple offers, if something like that was to happen, let's say my client, I know they're a strong buyer, but this is their first time buying. So the FHA loan program made more sense for them with, you know, cash down, the better interest rate. Yes, they have PMI, but the monthly payment made more sense to them than going conventional, even though they had the cash to go 20% down conventional or 10% or whatever, okay? But it just made more sense to them to do FHA. And this happens a lot. If I was representing the client with FHA, I would have called the listing agent and say, hey, my clients are very strong buyers, They're only going FHA because of these terms, and it makes more sense for them. And the listing agent will most likely understand that and know the reason. And then once I hang up, I'm calling my loan officer and I'm saying, hey, call the listing agent and put in a good word for client A. The loan officer for the client would then call the listing agent and say, hey, Bob just put an offer on your house, on your listing, and they're actually really qualified, strong buyers. I know on the contract we're going FHA, 3.5% down, but they do have enough funds to put down 20%. But with the market the way it is, with the rates and everything, it made more sense for them to go FHA. But they are solid buyers. They do have the cash. They're just going with this loan program because it makes more sense for them. In 9 out of 10, that suffices any worries that the seller may have about which buyer qualifies more or better terms for the offer. Because if I'm already reassuring the listing agent, and then the loan officer is also reaching out and assuring them that as well, that just straightens the deal. It really does, and it goes a long way when they're deciding offers. Okay, we'll start off with LBen0707. She wrote, we bought our house from a man who built the house with his wife. She passed away 2 years prior to us buying. At the closing table, the title company lady keeps saying, when the sellers arrive type comments. And we're noticing the wife's names is on all sides of the paperwork. At some point, the realtor says, you do realize Mrs. B died 2 years ago? They had no idea and no one bothered to mention it. It was a huge scramble on their part because he then was told he needed a certified copy of her death certificate, which was packed away. Thankfully, my husband and I were given the keys and told we could go. Mr. B had to run by the health department to get another copy. It didn't hold up closing, but it still makes me shake my head that no one mentioned it at all. Okay, so that is crazy, but it actually happens way more often than we think. And there was 2 parties that actually dropped the ball on this. 1, the listing agent should have notified the title company as soon as they were under contract. If I was representing the seller, I would have made sure to tell the title company, hey, the client's wife is deceased. Here's a copy for death certificate, because her name is most likely on the deed. And so they're going to need that death certificate from the health department to prove that she is deceased to then move forward with the sale of the home. So that's crazy that the listing agent made no mention of it, which is crazy, in the paperwork as well. Because when you're under contract, addendums come up, everything that else comes up, who was signing on her behalf? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, how did that happen all the way to the closing table and no one noticed besides the buyer and the buyer's agent? And why did the buyer agent not even mention it to the listing agent? Like, why weren't you like, hey, I thought she was deceased, who's signing her, her name and stuff? Like, that's crazy to me. And then number 2, the title company. The title company is also part of the lien searches, and like the person holding the deed, like they have insurances for these types of things. Why did they not do their due diligence to ask the seller, hey, your wife has passed, do you have a record for a death certificate? Blows my mind. Since I had a closing just last week, and at the very first buyer consult I had with my client, I asked him about his life, if he's married, if he's single, what's up. And he is married. Legally, he's still married, but he is separated from his wife. Okay. And they're civil. They're on friendly terms. She still lives in their primary house, and he's been renting an apartment for the last few years because they have a child together. And so I asked him, hey, in Florida, state law, when you go buy a house, and even though your spouse is not on the loan, she's not going to be living with you at this new house, by law, Florida law, she has to come to closing and sign a couple documents acknowledging that she knows you're taking out a loan to purchase this house, even though she has nothing to do with it. But by law, because she is married to you, legally still married to you, and this is going to be your owner occupied home, she has to show up to closing and sign those documents. Otherwise, you're not buying a new house. No title company will go around this law. This is black and white. Can't get around it. And so because I knew this, I told them, ahead of time, hey, are you guys civil? Will she be able to come to closing and sign a couple documents? It'll be in and out, and then she can be on her way while you and I stay to finish the rest of closing. And he's like, yeah, we're friendly. No issues at all. And, once we were under contract, I told the title company he is married, but his wife is not on the loan, nor is she occupying the property. So it's going to be in his name only. And they're like, okay. Somehow at title, when we show up, the title company forgot. They just forgot because, they have all these transactions. They forgot about him being married and owner occupying this next house that he's signing for. Luckily, I've already talked to my client weeks ago. He knew that his wife most likely would have to come and sign a couple documents acknowledging that he's taking out a loan on this house. So the night before, he told her, hey, I'm closing tomorrow, at this time. Can you keep your schedule kind of flexible for me in case they do end up needing you to come sign? Because my realtor did mention, you may have to come sign. But, the title company hasn't told me anything, so I don't know for sure. And, the day of closing, we're signing, and then the title company realizes the spouse needs to be here. And I'm shaking my head because I told you. But the title company dropped the ball. And so he was able to just call his wife and be like, hey, can you come in the next hour? She was able to. So she drove up, signed the 2 documents acknowledging it, and then she left. And so we were still able to close that day, get everything funded, keys that afternoon, no problem. But this happens way more often than you would think. A lot of newer agents just don't know about that rule. Or people who are married for who knows what reason, they don't want their spouse to know about they're taking out another loan. They don't want to involve them, and so they don't tell them. And then at the end of the day, they didn't know that your spouse legally has to be there at closing to sign and acknowledge that you're taking out another loan. Doesn't matter if they're disappeared or what. That is state law. I haven't found a single title company that will go around it. That's just how it is here in Florida. But that happens often too. Okay, this next one is C from Florida. I was a seller. We had a lot of smart home stuff. This was 5 years ago, so my stuff was pretty new. We left an old iPhone on the counter and an Alexa along with directions to demonstrate the system. None of the stuff was crazy, just switches from Amazon, a smart lock, Ring doorbell, and a wireless garage opener. It was a DIY system. Before the final walkthrough, we removed an iPhone along with the Alexa, but left the directions. The day of the final walkthrough, they noticed the Alexa was gone. Not sure why they weren't upset about the iPhone. They flipped out. Lost their minds, everyone panicked. We ended up having to purchase an Alexa. 5 years ago, they were $200 and bring it to closing to save the deal. Hey, that's not bad. $200 to save the deal. I would have done it too. So sometimes at final walkthroughs, normally we go just to make sure that the home looks like the way it was at the time of offer and to make sure there's nothing leaking or anything crazy, right? The home looks the way it did when we first walked through. And anything that we had negotiated during the inspection period has also been taken care of. The trick with this is, and to ease everyone's mind, is I always ask for invoices and photos 5 days before closing. And so the seller would hire contractors to do the work and then send me the invoices and photos to show that it's done. Because Lucy's 5'1", I'm not going on top of the roof to check and see if a cracked tile roof has been replaced, or I can't see into an HVAC system if it's been serviced, and like that kind of stuff. So it's better for me to get an actual invoice from the AC company that says they came out on this date and they serviced it and this is what they did to it, and here's the invoice and the seller paid for it. That kind of things, I can call the company to verify that it was done. So that's what I do at the final walkthrough. But in this case, for the seller, yes, if the buyer at the time of negotiations asked for things to be left behind and at closing, at the final walkthrough is no longer there, they could actually walk out and cancel the contract because they had negotiated and you agreed to leaving X, Y, and Z behind. And so sometimes that happens when the seller just forgets. That happens actually, like, oh, I didn't know they wanted the TV, or I forgot they negotiated the TV to stay behind with the TV mounts. Because here in Florida, you're supposed to leave TV mounts on the wall. If it's screwed and glued to the wall, it's supposed to stay. And so typically we ask for TV mounts just to stay. And then the seller will take the TV with them. But sometimes, we ask for the TV to stay part of the sale as well. And at closing, if we notice that the TV is gone, then actually the seller's on the hook to replace the TV for the buyer prior to closing. And sometimes everyone's moving, everyone's in a rush, and they can't, they'll just cut them a check and give it to them, a title company. That happens too. But yes, as a seller, be very careful and double check the contract terms to make sure anything that the buyer had asked to be left behind and you agree to it is left behind, that you don't accidentally take it with you, because that could cause a delay or an issue at closing. Here's an interesting post that I saw from Elena6532. She says, my realtor in Georgia, we just sold in Cary, told us a common tactic is for the builders to try to keep delaying so you'll back out. People like you locked a lower price, and the builders know they can make a lot more now with the market that way it is, so they try to get the buyers to break the contract. Shady and shitty, but happening all over. Best of luck, whatever decision you make. That's crazy. If you think this could happen where the builder is trying to get you to back out of contract, you have a contract. Like with me as a realtor, I've read that contract back and front. Like I know it. So if they were trying to do some type of shady stuff like this, I would be like, reference to this section on this page. You don't have, the right to do that, or you have to have a timely order for when you have to deliver a product. Like I would flip. And I would really represent and fight hard for my client, because that's shady. But I've heard that can happen as well. All right, friends, thank you for watching today's realtor's reaction to other users' closing horrors or funny stories. Some of them were definitely closing horrors, and some of them are just a funny story. And I think we all can relate to things in life. It doesn't always go the way we planned. And so even with closing on a house, not everything's going to go smoothly. Not everything's going to go perfectly. But, having the right realtor by your side definitely makes a difference in that experience. And, we're here to advocate and to help you through that process, because buying a home is difficult. And if you're about to, embark on this home buying journey, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here in the Central Florida area. I primarily work with vacation homeowners, primary homeowners, first-time buyers, VAs, USDA, you name it, I do it. I'm actually really close to Disney World, and so I have a lot of people who move here with their families, and they're looking for their next forever Florida home. So if you're ever in the area or you would like to buy and sell, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is below. And thank you for watching today's video. See you soon. Bye.